Karen told the court, "Judge Judy is corrupt," and everyone gasped. But Judy? She just smiled, leaned back in her chair, and said 5 words that changed everything. "Let me show you something." What happened next wasn't just a courtroom moment. It was a masterclass in how truth destroys lies, how evidence crushes accusations, and how one woman's arrogance became her own undoing on national television. Because here's what Karen didn't know when she walked into that courtroom with her folder full of complaints and her rehearsed speech about being a victim. Judge Judy had already seen the footage. All of it. Every single frame that would expose not just Karen's lie, but something far worse. A pattern. A calculated scheme. And a history of doing this exact same thing to innocent people over and over again. The courtroom that afternoon was packed, not with the usual mix of curious tourists and bored spectators, but with people who'd heard whispers. Whispers about a case that was going to be different. A case where someone had the audacity to call Judge Judy herself corrupt, rigged, biased. The air buzzed with an electric tension, the kind you feel right before something explosive happens. Cameras were positioned perfectly, microphones ready to catch every word, because the producers knew. They knew this wasn't just another small claims dispute about a security camera. This was the day someone tried to play the victim card against the one judge who'd built her entire career on sniffing out exactly that kind of manipulation. And Judge Judy? She wasn't worried. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't even slightly rattled. Because she had something Karen didn't. The truth. And in her courtroom, the truth always, always wins. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. At the plaintiff's podium stood Karen Mitchell, a woman in her mid-40s with designer sunglasses pushed up on her head like a crown, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. She wore a blazer that screamed, "I know my rights," and carried a leather folder bulging with printed documents, tabs sticking out in rainbow colors like she'd prepared for trial at the Supreme Court instead of small claims court. Her posture was rigid, her chin slightly elevated, and her eyes scanned the room with the look of someone who believed she was about to teach everyone a lesson. This wasn't her first time seeking what she called justice. In her neighborhood, Karen Mitchell had become something of a legend, though not the kind anyone aspires to be. She was the woman who'd gotten 3 managers fired from local businesses over incidents no one else witnessed. The woman who'd turned a dispute about a parking space into a 6-month HOA battle that cost the association $12,000 in legal fees. The woman who'd called the police on a child's lemonade stand for operating without a permit. Her neighbors had learned to avoid eye contact, to keep their distance, to never, ever give her a reason to focus her attention on them. But one neighbor hadn't been careful enough. And that's why they were all here. Karen was suing her next-door neighbor, Patricia Williams, for $5,000. The claim? Invasion of privacy, emotional distress, and harassment, all stemming from a security camera that Patricia had installed on her own property 6 months earlier. According to Karen's complaint, this camera was pointed directly at Karen's home, recording her every movement, violating her sanctuary, making her feel watched and unsafe in her own backyard. She documented everything, she claimed. She had measurements, timestamps, photographs, and a journal detailing every moment she'd felt the oppressive weight of surveillance. She'd even consulted with 3 different attorneys before finding one willing to take her call, though notably, none had agreed to represent her. That should have been a red flag, but Karen saw it differently. They were all part of the problem, she decided. All too afraid to take on what she called the security state mentality. Her complaint, submitted in writing to the court, read like a manifesto. 17 pages detailing not just the alleged privacy invasion, but a broader conspiracy about how cameras were destroying American freedom, how neighbors were becoming spies, how technology was being weaponized against innocent people. Judge Judy's staff had read it, highlighted the relevant parts which amounted to maybe 2 paragraphs, and prepared accordingly. But Karen believed every word she'd written was essential, was evidence, was going to prove her case beyond any doubt. She'd even prepared a PowerPoint presentation, though the court had gently informed her that wouldn't be necessary. She brought it anyway, on a USB drive in her pocket, just in case Judge Judy changed her mind once she heard the opening statement Karen had rehearsed 47 times in front of her bathroom mirror. On the other side of the courtroom stood Patricia Williams, and the contrast couldn't have been more stark. Patricia was a 62-year-old retired elementary school teacher, a grandmother of 5, wearing a simple blue cardigan and clutching a significantly thinner folder with hands that trembled slightly. Not from fear of the case, but from sheer exhaustion. Exhaustion from 6 months of harassment. 6 months of Karen showing up at her door at odd hours demanding she remove the camera. 6 months of finding notes left on her car windshield with legal threats and accusations. 6 months of being followed at the grocery store while Karen took photographs, quote, documenting the harassers' movements, unquote. Patricia had installed the security camera for one simple reason. Her home had been broken into 8 months earlier while she was visiting her daughter in Phoenix. The thieves had taken her late husband's coin collection, her grandmother's jewelry, and a laptop containing 5 years of photographs she hadn't backed up. The police had been sympathetic but realistic. Without evidence, without witnesses, without cameras, there was nothing they could do. So Patricia had done what thousands of Americans do every single day. She'd gone to a home security store, purchased a basic camera system, and had it installed by a licensed professional who ensured it was pointed at her own front door, her own driveway, her own property. Just like the law allowed. Just like common sense dictated. But Karen had seen it differently. From the moment that camera went up, she'd decided it was about her. Never mind that her property was a full 30 feet away, separated by a fence and a row of hedges. Never mind that the camera's angle made it physically impossible to see anything beyond Patricia's front porch. Never mind that Patricia had even shown Karen the footage once, in a desperate attempt to prove the camera wasn't spying on anyone. Karen had looked at that footage, seen that maybe, if you really squinted, you could see the very edge of her mailbox in the far corner of the frame, and declared that proof of invasion. That mailbox, she'd announced, was on her property. And if even 1 pixel of her property appeared in that footage, her privacy was violated. Her rights were trampled. And she deserved compensation. Patricia had tried everything to resolve this peacefully. She'd shown Karen the camera specifications. She'd offered to adjust the angle, even though it was already perfectly legal. She'd even offered to install a privacy fence at her own expense, anything to make this nightmare end. But Karen didn't want solutions. Karen wanted to be right. Wanted to be the victim. Wanted her $5,000 and an admission that she'd been wronged. When none of that worked, when Patricia finally stopped answering her door and started documenting every interaction for her own protection, Karen had done exactly what everyone who knew her expected. She'd filed a lawsuit. And not just any lawsuit, but one that painted Patricia as a predator, a stalker, a woman who'd weaponized technology to terrorize her innocent neighbor. And now they were here, in Judge Judy's courtroom, with cameras rolling and millions of viewers about to watch. Patricia stood quietly, her lawyer having coached her to answer questions simply and truthfully, to not engage with Karen's theatrics, to trust the process. She'd brought her evidence in a neat manila folder. The camera installation invoice showing the date and the professional installer's certification. The police report from her burglary. A simple diagram showing the camera's field of view. And something else. Something Karen didn't know about. Something that was about to change everything. But that would come later. At her bench, Judge Judy sat reviewing the case file one final time, her reading glasses perched on her nose, her expression giving nothing away. She'd been doing this for 25 years on television and decades before that in family court. She'd seen every type of case, every type of plaintiff, every type of scam and scheme and manipulation. And she'd developed an instinct, a sense for when something didn't add up. This case had triggered that instinct the moment she'd read Karen's complaint. The overwrought language. The dramatic claims. The conspicuous absence of actual evidence beyond feelings and accusations. And then there was Karen's history, which Judge Judy's staff had uncovered with some basic research. 3 previous lawsuits, all dismissed. 2 restraining orders filed against her by different neighbors. A pattern of behavior that screamed frivolous litigant. But Judge Judy hadn't made up her mind yet. She never did before hearing the case. Because that's not how justice works. You listen. You evaluate. You follow the evidence wherever it leads. And if that evidence showed Patricia really had violated Karen's privacy, Judge Judy would rule accordingly, public opinion be damned. But she had a feeling. A strong feeling. That this case was going to be memorable. The bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Judy looked up from her papers, her sharp eyes moving from Karen to Patricia and back again. The room fell silent, that particular kind of silence that only exists in courtrooms and churches, heavy with anticipation. Karen straightened her shoulders, ready for her moment. Patricia took a quiet breath, hoping this would all be over soon. And Judge Judy picked up her gavel, ready to begin. Judge Judy's voice cut through the silence like a blade, sharp and precise, no warmth but no hostility either, just pure judicial efficiency. Ms. Mitchell, you're the plaintiff. You claim your neighbor's security camera violates your privacy and has caused you emotional distress to the tune of $5,000. Explain your case. Karen took a deep breath, the kind someone takes before delivering a speech they've practiced so many times they could recite it in their sleep. She opened her leather folder with a theatrical flourish, pulled out the first of many highlighted documents, and began. Your Honor, thank you for seeing me today. What I'm about to describe is nothing short of technological harassment. For 6 months, I have been forced to live under constant surveillance. Every time I step outside my home, every time I check my mail, every time I simply exist in my own space, I am being watched. Recorded. Monitored like a criminal. Her voice started measured but was already climbing towards something more dramatic. This isn't about a simple security camera, Your Honor. This is about a woman who has weaponized technology to intimidate me, to control me, to make me afraid in my own home. Judge Judy's pen hadn't moved. She sat perfectly still, watching Karen with the kind of attention that made most people uncomfortable, the kind that saw through rehearsed performances. Do you have evidence that this camera is pointed at your property? Karen's rhythm stuttered for just a second. Well, Your Honor, if you'll let me finish explaining the full context of the situation, I think you'll understand why the specific angle of the camera is just one part of a larger pattern of. Judge Judy's hand came up, a simple gesture that somehow carried the weight of a stop sign. That's not what I asked. I asked if you have evidence. Photographs? Video? Measurements showing this camera captures your property? Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. Your Honor, I have extensive documentation of how this camera has affected my mental health. I have journal entries detailing my anxiety, my sleep disruption, my feeling of being constantly watched. I have consulted with multiple people who agree that, multiple people are not evidence, Judge Judy interrupted, her tone still even but with an edge now, like a knife being sharpened. Answer my question. Do you have proof that this camera is pointed at your property in a way that violates your privacy? Karen's folder snapped shut, the sound echoing in the silent courtroom. Her carefully maintained composure began to crack around the edges. Her voice rose half an octave. Your Honor, with all due respect, you're not allowing me to present my case properly. There's a procedure here, and I have a right to explain the full situation without being interrupted every 5 seconds. A murmur rippled through the gallery, barely audible but unmistakable. People shifted in their seats. The bailiff's eyebrows rose slightly. Patricia Williams's lawyer touched her arm gently, a silent message to stay calm. Judge Judy removed her glasses slowly, deliberately, and fixed Karen with a look that had made countless plaintiffs reconsider their life choices. Ms. Mitchell, let me explain something to you. This is my courtroom. I ask the questions. You answer them. That is the procedure. And the question I'm asking is simple. It requires a yes or no answer. Do you have physical evidence that this camera invades your privacy? Karen's face flushed red, her hands gripping the podium. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've clearly already made up your mind. You're not even giving me a chance to present my side. Her voice was loud now, echoing off the courtroom walls. This whole thing is rigged. The system is designed to protect people like her and shut down people like me. Judge Judy's expression didn't change. People like who? People who stand up for their rights. People who refuse to be bullied. People who demand justice instead of just accepting whatever the authorities tell them. Karen was fully escalated now, her prepared speech abandoned, her true feelings pouring out. You've already decided I'm wrong, haven't you? Before I even got to say my piece. That's not justice, that's bias. That's corruption. The word hung in the air like a grenade. The entire courtroom seemed to inhale at once. Corruption. She'd actually said it. Accused Judge Judy, on national television, in her own courtroom, of being corrupt. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. The bailiff took an involuntary step forward. The camera operators zoomed in instinctively, knowing they were capturing something extraordinary. And Judge Judy? She didn't flinch. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't show even a flicker of anger or offense. Instead, she did something far more unsettling. She smiled. Not a big smile, not a warm smile, but a small, knowing smile that somehow contained entire volumes of unspoken communication. The smile of someone holding a royal flush while their opponent goes all in on a pair of twos. She leaned back in her chair, that smile still playing at the corners of her mouth, and picked up a piece of paper from her desk. Corrupt, she repeated, her voice quiet, almost conversational. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Mitchell. You're telling this court, and everyone watching, that I'm corrupt because I'm asking you for evidence. Karen doubled down, perhaps sensing she'd already crossed a line and deciding to sprint past it. Yes. You're not even listening to me. You're treating me like I'm the problem when I'm the victim here. Everyone knows you favor defendants. Everyone knows this show is rigged for drama, not real justice. You make up your mind in the first 30 seconds and the rest is just theater. The room was electric now, silent but crackling with tension. Every eye darted between Karen and Judge Judy, waiting for the explosion, the judicial fury, the moment when Karen would be held in contempt and thrown out. But Judge Judy just kept smiling. She set down the paper she'd been holding and folded her hands calmly on the desk. Her voice, when she spoke, was almost gentle, which somehow made it more menacing. Ms. Mitchell, I appreciate your passion. I really do. And since you've made such a serious accusation about my integrity, about this court's integrity, I think it's only fair that I show you something. She gestured to the bailiff with one finger. Bring up the defendant's exhibit package. All of it. Let's put it on the screen. Karen's confident posture wavered for just a moment, uncertainty flickering across her face. What exhibit? I wasn't told about any exhibits. Judge Judy's smile widened just a fraction. Oh, you'll see. We're going to watch it together. All of us. And then, Ms. Mitchell, we're going to talk about what corruption really looks like. The screen descended from the ceiling with a mechanical hum that seemed louder than it should in the hushed courtroom. Karen's eyes darted to it, then back to Judge Judy, then to Patricia, trying to read what was coming. Her hands, so confident moments ago, now fidgeted with the edge of her folder. Judge Judy gestured to the screen as the first image appeared, a clear view of Patricia's front porch, driveway, and the sidewalk leading to her door. Nothing else. Just Patricia's property, exactly as a security camera should capture. This is the footage from Ms. Williams's security camera. The camera you claim is invading your privacy. I'm looking at it right now, and I see her driveway, her front door, her walkway. I don't see your property, Ms. Mitchell. Where exactly is this invasion happening? Karen leaned forward, squinting at the screen. If you look at the far right edge, you can see part of my mailbox. That's my property. That's the invasion. Judge Judy's eyebrows rose slightly. Your mailbox. Which sits on the street. In public view. Where anyone walking by can see it. She paused, letting that sink in. But let's move on, because this gets more interesting. She nodded to the bailiff, and the footage jumped to a different timestamp, dated 5 weeks earlier. Now, Ms. Mitchell, watch this carefully. Tell me what you see. The video played. At first, nothing unusual, just an empty driveway in the late afternoon sun. Then a figure appeared from the left side of the frame, walking purposefully up Patricia's driveway. The figure was unmistakably Karen, wearing the same blazer she had on today, carrying what looked like a measuring tape. Judge Judy paused the footage. That's you, correct? Karen shifted her weight. I was measuring the distance to prove how close her camera is to my property line. I have a right to document. On her property, Judge Judy interjected quietly. You're on her driveway. Without permission. Measuring things. She let the footage continue. Karen on the screen walked right up to the camera, stood on her tiptoes, examined it closely, even reached up to touch the mounting bracket. Judge Judy paused it again at the exact moment Karen's hand made contact with the camera. And now you're touching her property. Her security equipment. Still want to talk about invasion, Ms. Mitchell? Karen's face was flushed now, her voice rising defensively. I was just trying to see exactly what it was recording. She refused to show me, so I had to check myself. Judge Judy's smile returned, colder this time. She refused to show you. So you trespassed. You touched her equipment. And then. She nodded for the next segment of footage. The timestamp jumped forward 3 days. Same driveway. Same camera angle. But this time Karen appeared with something else, a ladder. Patricia's ladder, taken from her garage. The courtroom gasped collectively as they watched Karen position the ladder directly under the camera, climb up, and begin attempting to adjust the camera's angle, tilting it away from Patricia's door. You're tampering with her security system, Judge Judy said, her voice cutting through the shocked murmurs. Without permission. On her property. Using her ladder. Judge Judy didn't wait for Karen to form another excuse. She held up her hand, silencing the attempted explanation before it could begin, and picked up a document from her desk. Ms. Mitchell, we're not done. Because this isn't just about trespassing or tampering with your neighbor's camera. This is about a pattern. She adjusted her glasses and began reading from the document. 2 years ago, you sued your previous neighbor for quote, harassment, involving their outdoor lighting. Case dismissed. 18 months ago, you filed a claim against a local coffee shop for emotional distress after they asked you to leave for berating their staff. Case dismissed. 1 year ago, you attempted to sue your homeowners association president personally for quote, discrimination. Also dismissed. She set the paper down and looked directly at Karen, who stood frozen at the podium. You have filed 7 lawsuits in 3 years. Every single one dismissed. Every single one following the same pattern. You insert yourself into a situation, manufacture a conflict, claim victimhood, and demand money. The courtroom was utterly silent. Even the camera operators seemed to be holding their breath. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice firm but controlled. Your case is not only dismissed, Ms. Mitchell. It's dismissed with prejudice, which means you cannot refile it, ever. Furthermore, you will pay Ms. Williams $3,200 for her legal consultation, court costs, travel expenses, and the time she's wasted dealing with your harassment. Karen's mouth opened in shock. $3,000. That's almost more than I was suing for. You can't, I can. And I just did, Judge Judy cut her off. And I'm not finished. I'm referring this case to local authorities for criminal trespassing charges based on the video evidence. Your repeated presence on Ms. Williams's property without permission, your tampering with her security equipment, and your 6-month campaign of harassment may constitute stalking under state law. Judge Judy's gaze didn't waver. You walked into this courtroom and called me corrupt because I asked you for evidence. You accused this court of being rigged because I wouldn't let you perform your rehearsed victim speech. But corruption, Ms. Mitchell, is abusing the legal system for personal gain. It's filing false claims to extort money from innocent people. It's wasting court resources that should go to real victims with real grievances. You want to see corruption? Look in the mirror. She picked up her gavel. Ms. Williams, your camera stays exactly where it is. You have my permission to keep every inch of footage involving Ms. Mitchell, and I suggest you use it if she comes near your property again. This case is closed. Get out of my courtroom. The gavel struck with a sharp crack that seemed to echo long after the sound faded. Karen stood motionless for 3 full seconds, her face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally humiliation. Her carefully prepared folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the floor. She didn't bend to pick them up. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, her designer sunglasses sliding down over eyes that were now glistening with tears she refused to let fall. The bailiff stepped aside as she passed, and the courtroom doors swung shut behind her with a finality that felt almost symbolic. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Patricia Williams let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 6 months, and her shoulders sagged with relief so profound it was almost physical. The episode aired 3 days later, and within 2 hours it had already been clipped, shared, and uploaded to every social media platform in existence. Judge Judy Destroys entitled Karen with her own security footage racked up 2 million views in the first 24 hours. The smile before she played the tape became a viral moment, gifted and memed into internet immortality. Comment sections exploded with reactions. The way she just calmly said, "Let me show you something," and then destroyed her with evidence. This is cinema. I've watched this 12 times and it gets better every single time. That's what happens when you bring feelings to an evidence fight. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice once. Didn't have to. Just let the tape speak. Legendary. Legal experts began weighing in on morning talk shows, praising not just the outcome but the method. A criminal law professor from Georgetown used the case in her lecture about frivolous litigation, pointing out how Judge Judy had systematically dismantled Karen's credibility by simply presenting facts. A former prosecutor wrote an op-ed titled, "Why Evidence Matters More Than Emotion, Lessons from a Viral Courtroom Moment," that was shared 40,000 times. But the impact went far beyond internet fame. The local district attorney's office, true to Judge Judy's word, did open an investigation into Karen's behavior. The security footage, combined with Patricia's documentation of 6 months of harassment, resulted in a restraining order requiring Karen to maintain a distance of 100 feet from Patricia's property. The pattern of dismissed lawsuits became part of the public record, and suddenly every attorney in the area knew her name. When she attempted to file another claim 3 months later against a different neighbor over a property line dispute, the judge took one look at her history and issued a pre-filing order requiring her to obtain court permission before filing any future lawsuits. Her reputation as a serial litigant was now formalized in the legal system. She moved to a different city 6 months after the episode aired, but even that didn't erase what had happened. The video was permanent. The judgment was permanent. The lesson, it seemed, was permanent too. For Patricia Williams, the aftermath was transformative in ways she never expected. Local news reached out for an interview, and her story about standing up to harassment resonated with viewers tired of hearing about bullies winning. She received dozens of letters from neighbors in similar situations, people dealing with their own Karens, who weaponized victimhood. Patricia started speaking at community meetings about property rights and the importance of documentation, always emphasizing how her simple security camera had saved her from months or possibly years of legal nightmares. Her neighbors, who'd watched Karen's reign of terror from a safe distance, rallied around her. They threw her a celebration dinner, contributed to help cover her legal costs, and several installed their own security cameras, having learned the value of evidence. Patricia kept her camera exactly where it was, and added 2 more covering other angles of her property. Not out of paranoia, but out of practical wisdom earned the hard way. The lessons from the case rippled outward in ways both obvious and subtle. First, the power of evidence became impossible to ignore. In an age where everyone has an opinion and social media amplifies emotion over facts, Judge Judy's handling of the case was a masterclass in why documentation matters. Karen's feelings, her rehearsed speech, her journal entries about anxiety, none of it mattered when confronted with video footage showing exactly what she'd done. The camera didn't lie. It didn't have an agenda. It just recorded reality, and reality destroyed Karen's entire narrative. Second, the danger of the boy who cried wolf became painfully clear. Karen's history of dismissed lawsuits hadn't just cost her money and time. It had cost her credibility. By the time she had what she thought was a legitimate grievance, nobody believed her because she'd burned through all her credibility on false claims. Real victims suffer when people weaponize victimhood for personal gain, and the legal system had finally caught up with her pattern. Third, assumptions are dangerous. Karen had assumed Judge Judy would be swayed by emotion, by a well-rehearsed performance, by accusations of bias when things didn't go her way. She'd assumed wrong. She'd walked into that courtroom thinking she could manipulate the system, control the narrative, and intimidate a judge into ruling in her favor. Instead, she'd run headfirst into someone who'd spent decades recognizing exactly that kind of manipulation. Fourth, staying calm is more powerful than fighting fire with fire. Judge Judy's response to being called corrupt wasn't defensive anger or wounded pride. It was a smile and 5 words. Let me show you something. That calm confidence, that willingness to let evidence speak instead of arguing, made the moment devastating. There's a profound power in not needing to defend yourself because the truth does it for you. So what did we really witness in that courtroom? We watched someone walk in with absolute confidence that their story, their feelings, their victimhood would be enough to win the day. We watched them call a judge corrupt, accuse the system of being rigged, and demand justice they didn't deserve. And then we watched the truth, cold and undeniable, destroy every single word they'd said. Karen's mistake wasn't just lying. It was believing that passion could replace evidence, that volume could substitute for facts, that playing the victim was a strategy instead of a character flaw. She thought she was walking into a courtroom where she could perform her way to $5,000. Instead, she walked into a masterclass on why the truth doesn't need theatrics. It just needs to be shown. Judge Judy's smile before she played that footage wasn't arrogance. It was the quiet confidence of someone who knows they have the receipts. She didn't need to argue with Karen. Didn't need to defend herself against accusations of corruption. Didn't need to raise her voice or match Karen's energy. She just needed to press play. And in that moment, Karen's carefully constructed narrative collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. The footage showed trespassing. The records showed a pattern. The evidence showed exactly what kind of person Karen really was. Not a victim. A predator who'd finally met someone she couldn't manipulate. Patricia Williams walked out of that courtroom vindicated, relieved, and finally free from 6 months of harassment. Karen walked out owing $3,000, facing a criminal investigation, and starring in a viral video that would follow her forever. And millions of viewers learned something valuable. That justice, real justice, doesn't care about your performance. It cares about what you can prove. The truth doesn't need you to be loud. It just needs you to show up with evidence. If watching Karen's lies crumble in real time gave you that sweet taste of justice, hit that subscribe button right now because I've got more stories where the truth wins and the receipts are immaculate. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have said to Karen after that footage played. Would you have kept Judge Judy's calm or would you have lost it? And if you want another story about someone who thought they were untouchable until reality hit them hard, check out the video I'm linking in the description about the lawyer who tried to fake evidence and got destroyed in court. Remember, in life and in courtrooms, always keep your receipts. Always document everything. Because the truth has a funny way of coming out, and when it does, you want to be on the right side of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where justice is served cold and the evidence speaks louder than lies ever could.